Final Frontier is, up to this date, Iron Maiden's 15th album. And, we don't know if it's going to be their last. From all I know, the band has not made any statement saying whether this will be their last album. However, it's been 4 years since its release in 2010, so I think it's their last album, though. They could still make another studio album, I don't know. It's just speculation at this point, but I just want to talk about the album on this video. Now, this album divides a lot of fans. It's extremely polarizing. A lot of fans despise this album intensely, and I've seen that, and I've seen reviews of people despising this album, and I've also seen reviews of people completely praising this album. Where do I stand? I stand somewhere in the middle. And this will be for a lot of really polarizing albums. I can see why people would despise it, and I can see why people would absolutely love and adore it. Let's talk about the bad stuff, get that out of the way. It's very significant, the things that make this album quite a weak Iron Maiden record, because Iron Maiden is one of my favorite, it's probably my favorite band of all time. So, mediocrity is not something that I expect from this band. So yeah, let's just talk about what makes it bad. It's way too long. It is 76 minutes long. Way too long. The last 5 songs of this album are over 45 minutes in length. Why? The chorus retardation is ridiculous. It was bad on Matter of Life and Death. It was bad on Brave New World. It was okay-ish on Dance of Death, but now it is ridiculous. It is absolutely ridiculous. As far as length and chorus retardation, terrible. Another thing, Bruce's voice. Bruce is getting old. I understand that. So why would you still write choruses where he's like trying to sing as high as he was on The Trooper? Like, obviously he's not, and he can't. But I get it, your voice is aging, so don't write material where the choruses are as high. You know, Iron Maiden doesn't have to write really high screaming vocals to be good. I've heard Bruce sing things that are not that high, that are like middle kind of range, and he does it beautifully. So why are there still choruses where he's screaming? It feels like he just, it does it because that's what Iron Maiden, you think of Iron Maiden, you think of Bruce Dickinson, you think of him screaming his face off, but if you can't do it, then don't do it. So, vocals terrible. Everyone else in the band is just not performing very good. Very sluggish. They feel old. You know, this is the first time where I would say they feel old. They're just playing very sluggishly. They're not playing sloppily. They you know, hit their notes on time. But it just doesn't feel like there's as much energy, which is understandable, so I can kind of let that off a little bit, but you could attribute some of that to the fact that they're still writing as fast music. But another thing that's really bad, the writing. This album's weakest point, the simplest way I can summarize it, forget the voice, forget even the chorus retardation, which is already really bad, but it's just not good music. I mean, the riffs feel stock, the melodies are boring, the intros are either too long or completely unnecessary. The writing just feels stale. It just doesn't feel like Iron Maiden are writing. It feels like a really boring band that writes really boring generic music wrote for Iron Maiden, and then Iron Maiden played it. You know, when Iron Maiden write music and perform it, it's like it's watching something or listening to something extremely unique. And this album still has the thing that it's got variation. It has different tempos, you know, fast, slow, high, low. But all Iron Maiden, that's one of the things I like on Iron Maiden. Almost all their albums at least have that going for them, that the songs don't just feel all the same. There's variation. But it's just not good writing. It's just boring, and it feels stock. It doesn't feel like Iron Maiden. It feels mediocre. And as I've said, mediocrity is not something I come to expect from Iron Maiden. But moving on to the good things, what is good? The lyrics. The lyrics are great. Still writing good lyrics. Pretty Simple. That's it. They're just writing good lyrics. They're not wasting time. They're not writing bad lyrics. But again, Bruce's vocals are singing those good lyrics not very well. Production's still good. I would say it's not as good as Matter in Life and Death, but it's still fine. I mean, the instrumentation on a technical level is not that good, but at least there's good production, so it's got that going for it. What else is going for it? The variation, as I mentioned, the artworks are really good, really unique. I actually really like this artwork. A lot of people say they don't like the artwork, but I don't know why. I mean, it's not like classic Iron Maiden artwork, but it's different, and I like it. Done by Melvin Grant, and production done by Kevin Shirley. So yeah, there are good things, and there are bad things. But what I think they should have done to make this album better, there's things they could have done. First of all, write lower choruses, write slower music that they can play better, and, you know, maybe experiment with more kind of balladry. Something like Tears of the Dragon comes to mind, which is off Bruce's solo material. Do more songs like that, because I'm sure Bruce could still perform these kind of slower, ballady kind of songs beautifully. He just can't do the high screaming stuff anymore. So yeah, there's different directions I think the band should have took to make this album better. But anyway, let's just go talk about the track list. So the album opens with a song called Satellite 15, The Final Frontier. And this is actually a very interesting song. It's the Satellite 15 bit, which is like the first half, is kind of progressive, psychedelic, spacey stuff, which I like, I have nothing against, but when Iron Maiden does it, it just feels weird. It's too long. It's like 4 minutes long of just weird noises, and there are vocals, but the vocals are turned down so low. It's like, if you're gonna have vocals, I wanna hear what he's saying. So when they turn it that low, it feels just pointless. But anyway, I don't want to talk about that much. It's not that significant. The Final Frontier. What about that? The second half, the latter half. Excuse me. It's just catchy. That's all this is. It's just catchy. The Final Frontier. It's repetitive. They're repeating the same idea, you know, where where the band, they play some chords, and then Iron Maiden, and then not Iron Maiden, and then Bruce Dickinson sings a line, and then it's kind of catchy. It's just repeated too many times, and yeah, don't like it. Weak opener. Moving on, El Dorado. Garbage. El Dorado is just, oh my god. It feels like when he's saying El Dorado, like someone is like grabbing his testicles and then pulling down on his testicles, so he's like trying to sing really high like this, but he can't. He can't sing this high chorus. Yeah, but the actual song El Dorado is just weak riff, chorus is too high, as I mentioned, and the verses are okay, but it's boring and too long. Moving on. To Mother of Mercy. This is actually a good song. It has a pretty okay-ish opening riff. The instrumentation so far is not good, and then we finally get okay riff, so that's good. That's a good start. The tone of voice is a lot better. On this song and the next song, Coming Home, it's what I was talking about. Bruce Dickinson singing more in a balladry kind of a style, or singing at least slower, and it's actually quite beautiful at points, despite how much I've been bashing this album so far. I want to stress this, I don't think this album is garbage. I don't even think it's terrible. I think Iron Maiden made the wrong decision in the stylistic choice of this album, and the writing is weak, and it's a mediocre Iron Maiden album. But anyway, that's off topic. Moving back on topic. Chorus is still a little bit too high, and the chorus itself is not very good. But Mother of Mercy is actually one of the better songs. Then we move on to Coming Home, which is probably my favorite song on this album. Again, it's the slower, softer kind of stuff, and the chorus isn't too high, and it's a little bit boring at times, but it actually can be quite beautiful, this song. Yeah, Coming Home is a good song, and not too long either. Mother of Mercy, Coming Home, and what's the next one? The Alchemist are actually pretty decently length songs. Decent as in, like, short, not too long. Let's move on to the 5th track, The Alchemist. Now, this is actually quite fast. Comes in with a really good riff, finally, some good instrumentation. And it's actually pretty good. The riff's alright, and it has a good guitar line, and it's a little bit faster, but the chorus isn't too high. Yeah, just quite like this track. It's actually quite a good song. And then we move on to Isle of Avalon. This song's just way too long. This song is way too long. Intro, too long. Boring. Intro. On A Matter of Life and Death, the intros felt short, sweet, and necessary. And then they just go into an explosion of energy, into some like beautiful riff, or some really thrashy riff, or just some some interesting instrumentation and a chorus. But on this album, the intros just feel weak and unnecessary, although it's still better than Bruce trying to sing the El Dorado chorus. So yeah, after a long, boring intro, it just feels like there's no energy. Just feels energyless. You know, Iron Maiden is an extremely, all metal bands need to have energy. If there's no energy there, then I'm not gonna like the music. If it feels stock, and it doesn't feel like the band are putting their heart into it, it's gonna be bad. That's saying for basically all music, but so much for metal, because energy is just such a big factor of metal. And yeah, the slow parts are boring, and the fast parts aren't that special either. The only thing is, it does have a good guitar line that they play a couple times every, 2 minutes between verses. But besides that one good guitar line, this song is pretty much garbage. And when I say one song is garbage, I do not mean the whole album is garbage. And when I say this album is mediocre, I do not say Iron Maiden is mediocre. Do not take what I am saying out of context. I can say one song in particular is garbage and still like the album or think the album's okay. Like Angel of the Gambler, that song's completely garbage, but I think Virtual Loving's a good album. So again, don't think when I'm just bashing a song, I'm saying this entire album's garbage. Do not do that. And then we move on to Starblind. Now this song's not very good either. It's pretty, not garbage, I wouldn't go that far. But it's a weak chorus, okay guitar line, not much energy again. And the melody just feels stock and boring, like pretty much the rest of the album, except for a couple good points, as I mentioned. And then we move on to the, third last track, Talus Ma'am. This one is actually okay-ish. Intro is too long, way too long. And the intro, being long, also feels pointless. When they go into the verses, they, stop. I always thought, on A Matter of Life or Death, at least, it was an intro, and then was a build-up to this big explosion of energy, and they go into a chorus or a verse. But this, they play an intro, and then it stops, and then they start playing faster. Well, then what was the point? Good guitar line, pretty good guitar line, but chorus is too high, way too high. But it's overall a pretty average track. Starting to get a little bit theme, average, mediocre, pretty much not good, or garbage. That's pretty much the theme for this album. It ranges from garbage to average to kind of average/good, I would say, this album. And then we move on to The Man Who Would Be King. Now, this is actually a really good song. I actually really like this song. Really short and sweet intro for a change. It's got a great guitar line, a powerful chorus, and finally, some interesting instrumentation. Finally, on this album, it gets some really good instrumentation, a really good melody, good riff, and overall, I really like this song. And it's not too long, though. Again, chorus retardation all over the place on this album. But so the last track is When the Wild Wind Blows, the epic of this album, and this is actually a really good track. I actually quite like this track. It's 11 minutes long. It's way too long, but it's actually a pretty good song. Now, it has a good riff. It has a pretty slow moments, which are actually quite beautiful. I really like the slow moments. And it's got a good intro. But other than that, this is just guff. It's just stuff that doesn't seem interesting. It's not very interesting music to listen to, and that's what Iron Maiden is so good at, is making really interesting music, not just like really catchy music. And this isn't even particularly catchy. But overall, it's one of the stronger tracks on the album. It's nowhere near as good as Iron Maiden's other epics, in my opinion. But yeah, it's a pretty decent song. So yeah, When the Wild Wind Blows, it's not too bad. And that concludes the track by track. Now, what do I think about this album overall? It's a very mixed bag. It has loads of very, very important things that are terrible or bad. And then it actually has some good moments and has some good elements to it. But the main point that I need to get across is that a lot of it just feels mediocre. That's it. It just feels like mediocre music, which, again, is not what I expect from Iron Maiden. But anyway, that's sort of me more of as a reviewer, as more of a fan. It's okay. It's actually pretty good to listen to. But it's really when you start thinking about what you're listening to that you realize that it's actually really weak. But if you're just casually listening, it's actually not a bad album. So I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10. And that concludes the Iron Maiden discography. I'll see you on Top 10 Iron Maiden albums later.